Hey everyone, welcome back to Playful and Naturalis, where today we're going to be building a koala house. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you like what you see, and let's get started. Alright, it's been a while because real life gets crazy sometimes, which then leads into you getting home and the only thing you want to do is crash into bed and maybe sleep for like 10, 12, 24 hours, maybe potentially a week, which isn't really helpful when it comes to making videos. Although it is very helpful to building because the mental exhaustion just leads to unlimited creativity, which also leads to I am already halfway through building the next build. Like, not the build that you're seeing right now, of course, but like usually the thing is that I finish a build, I record the video for it, or the voiceover and the editing and all of that, and after that video is uploaded, then I start working on the next build. Now, because I just didn't have the energy to do the voiceover, we're already, like, I'm basically now building a stockpile of videos, which is probably very handy so that the schedule gets a little bit more regulated and, like, schedule-y. Because it's basically been, oh yeah, this week I have a video. And then I'm gone for 3 weeks. So I don't want to do that, but yeah, that's what's been happening. Anyways, let's now actually talk about the build. So yes, this is where the emu habitat lay before the dark times. Before the times of the fried hard drive and the menace of the constantly shutting down PC, which is now completely fixed. Before anyone asks, like, my PC is completely fine, it's still traumatized, but then aren't we all a little bit traumatized? Anyways, so we're building what was originally a emu habitat, but I didn't want emus here because it's also not actually the right size for emus. Like, the original emu habitat was actually a little bit too small. So I needed tiny animals, and then there were koalas, which actually works really well because, I mean, for like Australian animals, koalas would be most fitting close to a playground, and this is going to be very close to a playground eventually, although I do want to make that the last build of the Australia area. And I'm also going to make this promise and just now, repeat this maybe in the comments because Poison, it has the memory of a goldfish, but I do want to make the promise that as soon as I finish the Australian area and then I clean up the zoo a bit, I am going to post Naturalis on the workshop. Kudos to anyone who's going to try and open this, although I'm running a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Super as a graphics card, so it should be able to handle it, but then like the processor, CPU, everything else is like, graphics card is actually the only thing that's not the latest thing. Anyway, so yeah, I will try and then post Naturalis on the workshop as soon as the Australian area is finished. So for anyone who's wanting to see Asian Highland builds or European or African builds, you're going to only be delaying the release of Naturalis. That doesn't mean that Naturalis is going to be ending after that, it's just, fun. Anyways, let's start talking about the actual build, because I completely forgot to do that. So, as I said, this is the koala habitat now, not the emu habitat anymore, because habitat was too small for emus, actually, even though I wanted this habitat to have like a harbor feel, because this area of the Australian area or Oceanian area is really just inspired basically by the Sydney waterfront. So I wanted to have that water harbor vibe, which I couldn't really have with the emus because they needed like all of the available land space, which the koalas don't need because they're tiny. But what the koalas do need is an indoor area, or basically their main habitat is going to be this building, because koalas and the Netherlands don't really go well together. Netherlands isn't Australia, the climate is very much different. So like, even though Dutch winter isn't much lately, like I don't think we have gotten snow in like 3 years, or at least snow that like stayed for like more than a day. it can get cold, but even then it's like, well, our houses are built for it, where our houses are not built for the warmth. So as like a heat wave in the Netherlands is agony because no house here has air conditioning and all of the houses are built to keep the heat in, so it's just pain. I have luckily a portable air conditioning unit, but yeah, you basically just don't want to move. So the koalas would be fine in a Dutch summer right now, but in winter and fall, spring, probably need to be indoors. So I needed to make basically 2 habitats, an entire indoor habitat that fulfills all of the koalas' needs, but then I also wanted to have them able to go outside because, as I said, this is going to be close to like a playground and you want to see the koalas from the playground. Or at least that's like a nice thing, as like, oh yeah, you can watch the koalas from the playground, because koalas are probably one of the more kid-friendly animals of Australia, because everything else just wants to murder you. Even though I find spiders and snakes kind of cute. You just have to see one danger noodle in a top hat and your entire fear of snakes just disappears. Well, I never really had a fear of snakes, but I used to be afraid of spiders, and now I'm just like, yeah, the bigger spider can't harm me. The small ones still are just like, nah. Not terrifying, but just nah. Because I'm just thinking, alright, you're smaller, which means you're more venomous, and I'm a dumbass that doesn't really look where they're walking sometimes. And I would walk into a web of yours. And then I would get bitten. And then I am stubborn enough to not go immediately to a hospital. I'm just like, oh yeah, I can work through this. I won't die. And meanwhile, I'm like seizing up on the floor. Yeah, I'm that bastard. Eventually, I will go to the hospital. But I think by that point, it might be too late. Anyways, let's go back to the actual building. So because of the area that this building is situated in, it basically separated the outdoor koala habitat into 2 sections, which I thought was like pretty nice, because then like you usually try, or at least in zoos, I don't know if it's with koalas, but like with a few animals, you try to keep the males and females separate, so that, you know, with like breeding programs, that you can kind of keep control over it. You know what the first thing is that koalas did when I placed them in this habitat? They swam. I've never seen a koala swim. I know that they can do it, but it's just like funny that the first thing that every animal does that I built a habitat for, they immediately just go for a swim. Without question. They're just like, oh yeah, there's water in your habitat? You're not really a swimming animal, and you're in the water. So yeah, it's not really that separated, but can be separated. I'm sure they can like sort of fence it off, but I didn't want to put a fence in the water. Anyways, back to the actual building, because I get sidetracked so much that my brain got sidetracked there, so I didn't know how to follow that up. Anyways, so the original idea for the building for the koala habitat was actually going to draw a bit more on like the harbor theme that I was going for in this area. And it was going to be barrel shaped. Because I was like, oh yeah, floating barrel, like a floating barrel in the harbor. That would be like a fun thing. It would also, again, play into like the nearby playground, because you kind of want things to be kind of fun looking there. Yeah, it just started looking like a isopod, which, I mean, it's fun, but it just looked a little bit strange there. And also it would have been a nightmare to fully build. I know that like, yeah, isopods, and I did look this up because in Dutch the name for isopods is real different, so I was just like, alright, usually if I don't remember the name I can kind of guess, because the Dutch word can be similar or close to it. Yeah, in Dutch they're called pissebedden. Isopods, pissebed. Couldn't be more different, I think. And I like isopods because they're kind of cute, and they really give me the vibe of like no thoughts, just vibes. And I like any animal that's just like looks extremely stupid, because I feel like I can relate to them then, because I'm also insanely stupid. So it's just like, kindred spirits. Also, the eye spots are just like everywhere. Like if you have anything in the garden where there's a slight bit of space underneath it, there's just isopods there. They're usually blue here, so that's also fun. And they're not that fast. Like a lot of other bugs scurry away immediately. The isopods are just like, hey, I like isopods. They're a lot more fun than a lot of other bugs. A lot. Like snails? Nope. Well, some snails. Like the snails with like a little house. Those are cute. Because of the garden, snails without a house, murder them on sight because they will eat all of your plants. Yeah, this is one thing that I've started doing because I didn't have access to my PC for the longest time. I've started enjoying gardening a lot, or just being in the garden. So I've also just started viciously hating naked snails because they eat everything in the garden. Also, just a quick note back to the actual building. I know that I'm like on a million different tangents here, but this is what happens when I don't have the energy to make a voiceover for a long time, but I am alive, which means that my brain is just storing up a lot of different topics, and then they just explode outwards in a video like this. But the entrance, or the entrance for the koalas to the indoor area, or like the entrance, exit, whatever you want to call it, this one isn't functional. Why? Because the planks that I used for like the flooring aren't climbable. Which means like I'm using these stained wooden planks. For some reason I'm just like, I shouldn't use these, because it's usually a hell trying to make this work. And I thought like, oh yeah, the koalas are tiny. This area or this opening is large enough for them, which it is. So for the longest time, because a lot of the times when the animals can't enter any of the doors that I built for them, for a lot of the times it's because the doors aren't large enough, because Plant Zoo has huge hitboxes for some of the animals, even the tiny ones. Like the door for a koala should probably not be larger than 2 times the koala, but Planet Zoo requires 4 times the animal. So for the longest time, I thought like, oh, the problem lies in that the doors, the openings aren't large enough. So I changed that a lot of the times. Didn't really work, because they just couldn't get onto the platforms for some reason. Even though I put like ropes and all of it down. And then I realized, oh yeah, it's these platforms. I really like these planks, but they just don't work for anything climbing. It's just like, nope, use this for building Poison, but if you want anything climbing, don't. Anyways, so as I said, now that we're working on the fencing of the habitat, a lot of like the pathing structures, like the elevators, everything is going to be extremely similar to the original emu habitat, just because I like those structures so much. Like the building I could change, but it was just like, yeah, this, what's it called? This platform, this wooden platform, or jetty, or what is it called? It's not a jetty, it's something, but I really liked how that looked, and also I could then break up the harbor area and have it be this wooden, not flounder, what, I really don't know what's called anymore. But like, I just really liked how the potting looked, and I was like, yeah, I could try and change it, but I will probably end up not being as happy with it. So I'm just going to keep it this way. The building is completely different, so it's not going to feel like the same habitat, especially because there's also now water in the habitat, which again couldn't do with the emus because they wouldn't have enough space. I mean, didn't have enough space at the end anyway, but you know, emus require a little bit larger space, which means that the emus are going to be moved to the side of this habitat. Like there's a huge area behind this habitat which is for another animal, but to the side there's also a larger area which could actually work for the emus, which then could tie into the great indoor building, which basically is just like a giant puzzle piece that I need to start laying out, but it's just so giant that it scares me. Because like the indoor building for the Australian area, and here going back to like, oh yeah, when the Australian area is finished, I'm going to put it on the workshop. Well, not the Australian area, I'm going to put Naturalis on the workshop then. Yeah, that can still be a very long time away because that indoor area, yeah, that's a big one. I don't know why I went full Mario there. But yeah, that's a very big build. Like all of the other builds, like there's going to be kangaroos, I might actually mix the kangaroos with the emus. Maybe then the build next to this one is going to be cassowaries or the demon looking turkey birds. But I don't know, there's actually quite a few animals that could work here. And then the big habitat is going to be a secret because that's the next build. Well, big habitat, it's just a big area. It was a nightmare to build the building, just because it's just a weird angle. Anyways, so yeah, there's still going to be a lot of things that I need to build, but I really want to focus on the Australian area before I move on to any other areas, because the dopamine of finishing this area is going to be off the charts. But anyways, so yeah, a lot of the structures are going to be the same. So here you can see like the fencing structure is pretty much the same with the planter in front. And then with the deck, that's what it's got. Well, it's not a deck because a deck is usually attached to a house, and this is supposed to be harbor, so this is a pier. Is that... Did I just get to the word just because my brain was just like, no, that word is wrong, now let's throw in random words. My brain is just weird. But I think if you've subscribed so far, you probably already know that. That like, if you put Poison in a room with a mic and just let his brain go wild, you're going to cause a black hole in the space-time universe thingy, which is just going to suck up everything. That's definitely... I don't know actually where I wanted to go with that, so let's move on to the actual build again. So as I said, a lot of the structures are going to be similar, or well, the structures, structure. I've now just warped my brain into some place where I think everything is somehow wrong. I also needed to figure out, alright, this is actually the fun thing when it comes to building this habitat. I found a document online of, what is it called? Basically how you are supposed to build with koalas in mind. So that goes about like, oh yeah, how do you make structures that would be safe for koalas to interact with? Like, it gives a lot of information to make a space livable for koalas, or at least it's usually about like urban development, so like building houses and how do you least impact the local koala populations by like special kinds of fencing that they can either use so that they wouldn't be too much obstructed by or that wouldn't pose a danger to them. And it's just like amount of happiness that I had when I found that document was just like off the charts. Because it was just like, ooh, yay, I finally don't have to just go on a night-long search for like facts about the animal. Because usually I need to like look up like, alright, how high can a koala jump from a standing position? Because you don't want them to escape. And at least my logic is like, oh, if you're ever running start, you're not going to jump as high, you're going to jump farther, but not as high. Or at least that's what I imagine. And of course with the koalas, you don't want trees closest to the border of the habitat so that they can't jump out of the tree out of the habitat. But usually looking up those facts, it's a little bit of like, all right, I found this source, but is it reputable? And here I was just like, yeah, this is an official document. I don't have to do a lot of fact checking. I can just work with this. And then I found out like, oh yeah, 1.5 meters. And for once, I didn't have to actually like, because a lot of these things are usually in like feet and such. So I have to, calculate it over to meters because, yes, hey America, most of the world works in meters. Yes. Also, what the fuck is Fahrenheit? I have no idea. Anyways, if you enjoy meters, don't forget to like and subscribe button. I don't know what that transition went, but let's just go with that. But yeah, most of the world uses meters and not feet. What is a feet? Like it's 3 point something something something. Sometimes it just feels like, did you guys just want to torture yourselves by doing that? Like a meter is just like nice. It's 100 centimeters is a meter. 1,000 meters is a kilometer. It's nice. Makes sense. It's the same goes for like liters and all of the measuring things. It's just nice. And then you get the feet and the inches and that. Anyways, but back to the document that I found. But yeah, it said like, oh yeah, you need to think of this and this. Also, koalas can jump 1.5 meters from a standing position. So I knew, alright, the thatch of the roof needs to be at least 1.5 meters off the ground, preferably higher, so that they can't jump up the roof, climb on the thatch and then get out. Also, all of the fences around need to be at least 1.5 meters high, and if there's water, that's probably going to help a lot. And then it doesn't need to be as high, because if you try jumping out of the water, it's very, like, you're not going to get there anywhere. Also, the water in this case helped. It didn't only give like, oh, the harbor vibe, it actually helped with keeping the koalas inside. Now, I don't know if koalas are as escape heavy as red pandas. Again, the only clue or the only knowledge that I have about red pandas is from my local zoo, where they just kept escaping their habitats. I don't think the koalas are as escape heavy, but you don't want to really run the risk. Like, yes, it's a koala, it's tiny, it looks really cute unless it's in water. Just look up a koala in the rain. It looks evil, but it's still a wild animal. No matter how long it has been in a zoo, it's still a wild animal. It has just been getting used to humans. So don't like try and annoy animals in zoos, like, you know, in any sort of way disturb them, because you don't know how they're going to react. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So you don't want to, even if it's cute, even if it's fluffy, you don't want it to escape out of its habitat, because you don't know what chaos it will bring. I was going to go somewhere with that, and then my brain was just like, yeah, let's just, for the sake of sanity and everybody's well-being, not do that. Anyways, now we're building the potting structure. So basically, I want to do this on the main path or the main thoroughfare throughout the Australian area. I want to have like some paths veering off from it, but because it's all rounded and such, it's very, you know, it's a little bit of a nightmare. This structure, I built it for the emu habitat as well, and it works really well. And it also, again, it gives off a little bit of harbor vibe, so I really like that. And it gives me a nice way to do a wheelchair ramp, because I want the wheelchair ramps to really be part of the pods and not just be like an afterthought. And to then also sometimes give like the ramps a little bit of like a unique view. It really helps with that. And just nice colors, plants and such, and just interesting ways to do the ramps. But yeah, so basically I've built this structure before. I'm building it again because I really like it. That's it. That's going to be... Well, I think actually this is the last habitat where I'm really going to be taking inspiration from what used to be there with the emu habitat. Like the kangaroo habitat is vastly different now. Just because of the layout. Also because I want the kangaroo habitat to be the actual right size. A lot of the habitats that I built previously are actually a little bit too small. Like all of the habitats that got wiped when the hard drive got fried, except the lion habitat. That one was huge for the lions. But all of the other habitats, especially in the Australia area, were actually just a little bit too small for the animals. So now I made all of them bigger. Of course, all of the habitats that got wiped, all of the habitats that are still there, I'm not going to change, because then I'm going to end up in a never-ending circle of renovating old habitats. Sometimes old habitats are exactly that. They are old, and so they might not be up to current standards anymore. But of course, you have to think, like, is it that bad that it requires renovation, or can you kind of manage it still? Because renovating an entire habitat in real life is very costly, especially when it comes to zoos. So I have a real life excuse for not renovating old habitats. Also just because I like the habitats, even though they're not perfect, especially the kiwi habitat. Also the crocodile habitat, the crocodiles constantly get stuck at the entrance. Yeah, they're just stuck there sometimes. Anyways, so here's where the fencing needed to change, because as I said, koalas can jump 1.5 meters standing. They are also good at climbing, so I knew, alright, I need glass. I need it to be, like, this is, I think, just over 1.5 meters high. Oh yeah, I needed glass and making sure that, like, alright, it's not climbable, so that, like, the bars in between, or yeah, the bars in between the fences are just smooth, so they can't get a grip on it. The wooden pieces on top are far up enough that they can't reach for those, just to make sure, alright, they can't climb up this. And with the metal fences, there are the spikes on top. And it's also, like, I'm sure that animals can escape from habitats. It's just like, will they attract attention while they're doing it? And if they do attract attention, then the keepers can intervene and get them back into the habitat before things happen. There's probably, like, especially with probably monkey habitats, cameras and such. But that's just me thinking logically, but not having any actual zoo experience. Although I did see that, like, a video of a hippo almost escaping its habitat, and then the keeper was just slapping it and it went back in. I'm not kidding, it was literally just slapping the mouth of a hippo. And if you think, oh, hippos are cute and adorable, they are not. I am more afraid of a hippo than of a lion, because those things are... Anyways, we're building a elevator. And here the thing was, like, this is, like, building elevators for me are pretty easy, because you build a box and then put it inside of a larger box. That's pretty much the idea for the elevator. The only thing that I realized was, like, alright, because this is mostly like a wheelchair or an accessibility elevator, I need to make sure that, like, the buttons and such are on the right height, so that anyone in, like, a wheelchair can easily reach for them, and that they don't have to, like, reach up high up. So that was pretty much one of the considerations of building this elevator. And besides that, it was just box in a larger box, and let's try and make it look a little bit pretty. There was just, like, with wooden pieces. Yeah, there's not much to say about this elevator. It's just, I think I've just built too many elevators, or at least it's quite similar also to the elevator that I built for the emu habitat previously. And because it's like, it's an accessibility elevator, I do have the feeling that, like, this was not mass manufactured because of course it's like the correct height for the large thoroughfare or the large boulevard or promenade through the Australian area. But I like there's some things that like, all right, this is not going to be completely like made in-house by Naturalis. This is like an outside company that's doing this, and they have like certain things that they have to do that Naturalis wouldn't be able to customize for like safety reasons and just manufacturing reasons. So I don't really have much to say about the elevator besides that I tried to make it look a little bit pretty. I also actually usually I set the elevator on the ground floor. I forgot to do that here, so the elevator is on the height or the floor of the boulevard, which you just have to like, there's it's not a button, like I didn't build a button, it's more of just like, how do you call it, like a sensor, like anyone who has a need of it can like, at least this is how I imagine it, anyone who has need of like these accessibility measures can get like a card at the front entrance, and then when they get to areas where they would need like this elevator or something, they can scan that card at like a scanner, and then like the elevator gets called, just to prevent anyone who isn't supposed to be using it or doesn't have need of this isn't going to be using it, just so that's always available for those people who actually need to use it. Kind of like, you know, it's not wheelchair toilet, but like, we call it a handicap toilet, but which is a disability toilet. Basically, the larger toilets, we call it a handicap toilet in the Netherlands or in Dutch, but like, it's pretty much just like making sure that if someone in a wheelchair or somebody with a disability needs to use that toilet, they can, and it's not occupied by just a random person who couldn't wait. That's the idea. And then of course it could also be of course used by like maybe the elderly who have difficulty with stairs or with like the height changes like the ramps, just that. And then it's building some planters, because my brain, I think, is a little bit fried by this point. Like a lot of the times, my brain is just like, all right, all of these topics, and then it's just like flower, butterfly. We're supposed to think thoughts now, aren't we, Poison? And then it just stops. Anyways, now we're actually building some lights. Now, usually I stick to one kind of light per area, so like the entire central area has one kind of lamp. The Asian Highlands, actually I don't know if those are going to have only one kind of lamp, because only one habitat of those is remaining, so maybe those will get more lamps, but like the African area has one lamp, but then the Oasis area is a little bit like I treat it as a different area within the African area, so there's two lamps in a way. But most often I stick to kind of one lantern post in an area. That's not the correct word, but you're not here for correct words. What you are here for is to like and subscribe. I don't know what my voice did there, but yeah, basically I was like, all right, this is going to be like a harbor area. And the lights that I do have in the rest of the Australian area aren't really harbor vibes. So then I decided, all right, let's get inspired by cranes. Let's make the lamps or the lampposts kind of inspired by like industrial cranes that you would see in a harbor. And then I wanted more plants, so then it was just like, yeah, let's put some crates with some mulch in there, and let's put some plants in there. This is also the first area where I used the white, I think they're called the ghost trees. I've used them, I think, for bushes, but I never actually used them as trees in the Australian area, which is a little bit weird because they're like one of the prettiest Australian trees. I am not... Wait, those aren't Australian trees. The ones that kind of look like they are a snake come to life. I think those are African. They have like the weird texture on the bark. There's also the one that's just completely yellow. Yeah, there's some plants where I'm just like, I know that you look like this in real life, but I don't like you, so I'm not going to use you. Now, I did want to make like a floating flounder to just have some kind of toy for the koalas on. Did change it eventually, so it's not floating anymore. And it has like pillars, it's actually standing in the water. But I really liked having like the tires to give off the idea of like, oh yeah, ships, you don't want them to crash into it too hard, and you want them to kind of be bounced away so that you don't damage the ship. And so I kept the tires and then added some like probably fake seaweed, but probably that actually doesn't have to be fake. I just think it's probably placed there. And then it's just a bunch of dead trees. Like that's all of the climbing structures for the koala habitat. I just wanted a lot of branches with ropes in between, and then you just let the koalas be. So I didn't want like very intricate climbing structures, just a whole bunch of sticks sticking out of the ground with ropes in between. And you know what? The koalas love them. They are almost never on the ground, which I think is realistic for koalas, that they are almost never on the ground. Although, koalas continue to surprise me because, again, demon koala. Throw a koala in the water and they look terrifying. They just look evil. I also learned that like, oh yeah, I always said, oh, koalas are wheat bears because I heard somewhere, oh yeah, the eucalyptus makes them high and dopey and all of that. I think that's not true, but I'm not certain. They are just very slow. So yeah, I still want to hold a koala. I know, I just said like 10 minutes ago, oh, these are wild animals. You shouldn't touch them. You shouldn't agitate them because you don't know how they react. Yeah, I also said that I'm an idiot and stupid and I want to hold a koala. I also want to hold a boa constrictor. I also want to hold like a Goliath spider or is it bird eater? I just want to hold a fluffy spider. I also want to hold bees for a reason, but that's because some bees are like really fluffy. And also bees are good for nature. This is something that I need to think of more when it comes to Naturalis. How to make sure that like the bees and the butterflies and all of those animals that are just randomly there. Usually, well, the bees aren't really attracted to the trash cans. That's more the wasps and hornets. Like, when it comes to a zoo or basically just any outdoor area, there's going to be bees, there's going to be butterflies, and they're good for nature. You want to make it so that they are attracted to wherever you are or wherever for a place, because bees pollinate and then you have pretty flowers and then nature works well. Just bees are good. If you hate bees, I hate you. That's the end message of this video probably, because bees are it's always the hornets and the wasps that are aggressive. The bees are just like there. I also bees are just fat, fluffy. They're just, I like bees. I like bees. Bees. Yeah, this is the part of the video where Poison's brain is just fully melted and now he starts incoherently talking. Just an FYI. It's just bees and butterflies. But then I also want to attract birds, which means that the bees and the butterflies would get eaten, which is actually a good thing for people who are saying like, oh, with nature reserves and such, like, oh, we shouldn't have wolves because they're going to eat the deer. Yeah, that's population control. That's something that happens in nature, and it's good for nature, because if you don't control the population of deer, you preferably by like predator animals, yeah, all of your plants are going to suffer because the deer are going to eat all of the plants. And then you will have like I think you call it a monoculture, where some plants will be able to survive and thrive, and those are then going to take over the entire area, which then further it's just a catastrophe because it's just, again, it's monoculture thingy. So yeah, eat deers and help butterflies and bees. Well, not eat deers, have predators. But then also, like, wolves will attack sheep, so I get why farmers wouldn't want wolves in the vicinity. But like in nature reserves, wolves and bears, just predators. Like, nature has evolved over centuries, millennia, to somewhat work. There's still some weird quirks in nature, but then there's weird quirks in humanity as well. I'm one of them. Yeah, I'm an idiot who somehow is able to build good. Anyways, that's going to probably be it for today's video, as we're finishing up the indoor area. This was literally the last thing that I built. Usually I built the building first, then I built all of the fences, then I built all of the potting and such, and lastly I actually built the habitat with like the plants, the climbing structures, and everything that the animal needs. It's usually very last on the list, just because it's not really dependent on everything else. Like, the building gives structure to the entire potting, or potting gives structure to the building, but then the building sets the tone for like, oh, this is how the fences, the potting is supposed to look. And then there's all the other outside structures. And yeah, I also completely forgot to show you guys how I built that keeper hut next to it. Well, it's not really a keeper hut, it's just there because I couldn't place an actual functional keeper hut there. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button. If you want to see more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. There's also memberships if you want emotes. And that's going to be it. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye bye.